Welcome to this episode of Biz Takeouts, Bizcommunity's soundbite-sized news to go, and the fourth and final episode of our e-commerce focus geared towards the launch of eCommerce Day on the 10th of March 2021. I'm your host, Angie White, and I'm so pleased to introduce today's guests. Anita Erasmus is the business manager, and Jaco Roux is the technical director of uAfrica, an e-commerce tool provider assisting companies with streamlining order fulfillment and shipping processes. They will be telling us about their company focus, how COVID-19 has affected the business, as well as the impact of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement on e-commerce and the need for sustainable development within the industry. Welcome, Anita and Jaco.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for joining me. To kick things off, Jaco, as one of uAfrica's co-founders, can you tell us a bit about the history of the business and what its focus is?
Okay. Again, thank you for having us, and it's always a pleasure to catch up again. So me and Andy's, you probably know Andy Egan's from Dubai. Our history come back more than 15 years, and we've both been in the e-commerce industry for more than 2 decades now. So he started Dubai, and I started Jump Shopping, which was a comparative search engine back in 2006. And then in 2012, he invited me for lunch. His branch and his vision for uAfrica, decided to put our heads together and start that. What was to bring Shopify, which is a e-commerce platform, to South Africa, because there was no payment gateways available to launch Shopify in South Africa. So we got that going, and that sort of kickstarted us into a multi-channel environment where we started syncing products to Dubai and to Price Check and to with WooCommerce as well. And that naturally progressed into fulfillment and shipping services, because we knew that that is the last piece of the puzzle that's really needed in South Africa. The payment gateways were sorted and the shopping platforms were sorted, but people were struggling as small businesses to get the product customers. Created with a few courier companies in South Africa, supplied shipping and fulfillment services. So that's we're never looking back. And it's been a good ride to be on.
Awesome. And then this question is directed to both of you. The COVID-19 pandemic seems to have been a shot of adrenaline in the e-commerce sector. Has uAfrica experienced any evidence of this growth, and have you had to adjust your operations in any way?
Yeah, well, Andrea, I think if we all look back at 2020, it was quite an interesting year. And from uAfrica side, yes, I mean, we experienced massive growth. Before that, we also had growth year on year. I think it was very common for the e-commerce sector. Mm-hmm. But last year we saw about 260% growth in terms of shipments that was facilitated by our platform. So from our side, it was extremely sudden and I think unexpected. So we really had to adapt quite quickly from an operational perspective in difficult environments. Everybody was working from home. We had to recruit new staff. We had to try and interview them, train them in all kind of remote working environments. So that was quite difficult to do, but we were very lucky that we had a strong team initially as well. So we were able to manage that quite successfully. It was a difficult year, but I think compared to other companies and businesses that struggled immensely, we are very lucky to have been at kind of the right place at the right time. But we also did a lot of work beforehand to be able to kind of grab that opportunity last year. So definitely from an operational side, it was quite something to manage. Maybe Jaco can comment more from a technical side, how we kind of manage that.
We were quite used to sudden spikes, because every year we have Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and then there's a huge spike where you would have 3 times the growth over one day. But I think nothing prepared us for what happened in May when the economy started opening up. As you know, in March it closed down completely. And there was big negotiations and arguments of opening up the courier industry at least, and everybody trying to find their footing. And I think the big spike in May was twofold. First of all, everybody had built up orders online because you were still able to place orders online. And there was a huge build-up in May and April, in March and April of orders. And when it opened up in May, huge spike. We luckily, being in a tech company, you can just add servers, and we got through it. And last year, 2020, Black Friday was a breeze because not even that got to the peaks of where we were in May. And it's a good thing because we saw so many new entrepreneurs and new businesses starting up, and it's definitely been good for the industry.
Definitely. It's been very unexpected, but yeah, a lot of companies just jumping on board. Then Anita, can you tell us, how do you expect e-commerce in South Africa to evolve beyond COVID-19?
Well, Angie, I think the stage has been set. So last year, obviously, there was a lot of new companies, a lot of new entrepreneurs taking this opportunity. People realizing something that we've known for quite a while is that the growth is in e-commerce. If you compare, the 25 to 30% growth before last year on year from an e-commerce side to an 8% for traditional retail. But I do think more people kind of seeing that opportunity. People are maybe not as scared of technology anymore. There was a lot of people forced last year to make use of technology. So I think people are more comfortable with it, and that kind of allows for more entrepreneurs to enter the market. And also from an e-commerce company or technology perspective, I think there's a lot of other companies seeing the opportunity. So we can expect an increase in competitors, I would say, in the years going forward, not just in our industry, but in all the other industries that also or services within e-commerce. But that's a good thing, right? Where competition is and industry grows, it's really good for the end consumer because it keeps us as companies on our toes. And I think it also, in a sense, then offer a better service to the end consumer. So e-commerce is an extremely exciting space to be in. And I think there's still so much potential for the years going forward. Interesting to see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years.
I definitely couldn't agree more. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. Then could you tell me, in both your views, what is the thing holding many companies back when trying to decide whether to sell online?
I'll go first on that one. We've seen bigger companies and corporate companies were quite arrogant in not supporting online as much. And I think COVID definitely forced them to go online because all of a sudden their customers were gone and they had to go where their customers were. But as Anita said, there's a big embrace of technology, but it's still an overload of information. I think that's stopping a lot of people, that fear of technology. And the younger generation is definitely jumping on that bandwagon easier than the older generation. But we've seen a lot of older folk really starting up and embracing technology. But I think the biggest thing holding people back is that fear of technology, which they need to overcome as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jaco, and I think it's lack of knowledge also. There's, as Jaco mentioned, there's so much information out there. And it's sometimes also kind of a combination of both, is that people, they're scared, but they're also kind of maybe sometimes I think it's too easy, a lot of, too easy to go. You just need to open up your website and Bob's your uncle, you're going to make millions of dollars or rands. And that's not necessarily the case. So I think people need to realize that if you do decide going to e-commerce from an entrepreneurial perspective, is that it's still a business. You need to do your research. You need to make sure you've got a good product. So there's still a lot to do and it's still a lot of work. It's definitely not a quick, business or quick way to make money. But if you can do it correctly, there's a lot of technology out there that can help you to kind of succeed a lot more than there were 5 years ago. So I think if people can have the confidence to make use of that technology, they can be extremely successful. So I think that is kind of what I would say is holding people back the most.
Definitely agree with both of you. Seen a lot of that as well. So yes, definitely the case at the moment. Then Jaco, many businesses have recently made a long overdue entry into the online sales space. What do you think are some of the most common pitfalls that merchants face when making this transition to online?
I think it's a very, very good question. And what we've seen, there's two parts to this for me. And it's there's a concept that they say, build it and they will come. And that's not always the case. If you have a website, the marketing is so important. People will not just pitch up because you have a website. So we call it sort of retail everywhere, and you need to be where your customers are. You need to find out where your customers are, and if they're on Instagram, then you need to spend more time on Instagram. You need to build that demographic, and I think people get that wrong. they think that they need to have a billboard next to the road, but their customers are not on the road. So that's the first part. You need to get the customers on your site. And the second part is the space that we move in, and it's delivery and logistics. You need to have competitive rates. You need to be able to, and I think that's what we bring to the party as well, is the smaller merchants could not negotiate good rates with courier companies because they were too small, they don't have the volumes. They might do 10 orders a month. So I think we sort of arming the rebels in that case, where we have, we provide them with good rates because we have a bit of buying power. But not only that, it's communication to your customers. If you communicate to a customer that the order will take 5 days, then they are content with that and they are happy with it. If you promise them 2 days and it takes 5 days, that's where the bad reviews start coming in and you start seeing reviews on Hello Peter. So I would say that if you can communicate to your customers at least and set the expectation of what needs to happen, that is a good thing. And I think people get that wrong. My daughter ordered a phone case a week ago and we didn't get any feedback for 7 days. And after mailing them and trying to find them and tracing the domain and then finding the owner and getting them on WhatsApp and then asking them, where's the order? And they say, well, it will be shipped in 2 days. I don't think that leaves a bad taste. You can get that customers combination. My opinion is the key factors.
Yeah, communication always important. I agree. Couldn't agree more. Then we've witnessed grocery delivery becoming more commonplace over the last year. Which other retail categories do you think are primed for growth going forward? Anita, perhaps you could answer this question.
Yeah, Andrew, I do think groceries was definitely one of the outliers that we saw last year. People realized that they can buy online their essential goods and not just a random present or something, interesting or different that they couldn't find in traditional retail. I do think that will definitely proceed. There was a massive change in consumer behavior where people is realizing that they can buy their everyday things online as well. So I do think groceries will still grow. Also other essentials like your toiletries and things like that. I think we saw a very big increase in that industry or that sector as well. And something that we've also seen from the companies that we work with is still fashion and clothing. A lot of people were very skeptical, still saying, I'm scared to buy online because how will I be able to return the product if it doesn't fit and all of that. And I think as the trust in e-commerce increases, people are more open to go and buy, the shoes, and they trust the industry in a sense that it doesn't fit, I can return it back to the merchant and I can get my money back if needs be. So we've seen a massive increase in fashion and apparel. So I think that will also pursue in the next few years going forward. But then also I think technology, I don't know if anybody been on Superbalist lately, but from a sizing perspective, they've really used the data that they've got, and the website is an interface to kind of help you to make sure that you're buying clothes that fits your size. So I think as that kind of tech also improves, people will even more enticed to buy those kind of products online. So I would say in general, really everything that's shipped easily. We still see a big struggle when it comes to bigger products, furniture, those kind of things, because the shipping becomes very expensive. Mm-hmm. So I think there is still a lot of progress to be made to do that competitively. So to be able to compete with the traditional retail more. But that's why we would say is maybe do a bit of both, traditional retail and online. But when it comes to e-commerce, I don't think there's just a specific category that will grow. I think literally every single category will grow in the next few years.
Yeah, I can see it too, definitely. Then I'll ask you for both of your input for this question as well. Logistically, technically, and environmentally speaking, how do you see courier and delivery companies evolving through this pandemic, especially thanks to the spike in online purchases?
Yeah, I'll take that one first, just from a logistic perspective and environmentally, and then Jaco can maybe comment from a technical side. Yeah. Logistically, we work very closely with a lot of the courier companies in South Africa, And as we had to scale, we could see that they also were forced to scale extremely quickly in very difficult environments with a lot of regulations, which nobody knew what was happening last year, what was essential, what wasn't essential, what were they allowed to do, all these health and safety regulations they had to put in place. But we really, from what our experience was, that they really did come to the party. So from a logistics side, I think the courier companies also realize that the e-commerce industry is a very big market for them. They're adjusting the way that they operate and their pricing to accommodate for the typical e-commerce product being collected from one collection point and delivered to multiple customers. So I really believe that the courier company in South Africa is kind of realizing the potential in the industry. Sadly, from an environmental perspective, let's be honest, it's not the most environmental type of industry. There's cars, there's petrol, there's fumes, there's a lot of stationery, there's a lot of plastic involved. So in South Africa, I think we still have a very, very long way towards being more environmentally friendly. And I do think 2020 was maybe the year where that wasn't the main focus. The main focus was just keeping the customer safe, the staff safe, and getting the product to the consumer. So I think there's still a lot to be done in that kind of area. We've seen some entrepreneurs coming in with like milli mailer, where the flyer bags are made of milli material. So, very creative, but that is still, I would definitely say, the exception and not the norm. So still a lot to happen from that point of view.
Yeah, and I think from a technical point of view, streamlining the whole process helped a lot. It wasn't long ago where every single merchant that sold something online had to fill in a waybill on a piece of paper. And streamlining that and automating that process and having that electronic makes for less mistakes as well. So streamlining that helped to speed up the process. And I think specifically that stuff happened before COVID, but what changed in COVID times specifically was contactless deliveries, where people would use pins or pictures for proof of delivery. So everybody had to evolve their businesses. And I think the couriers really came to the party, but they also saw the benefit of companies like uAfrica to integrate into them and to help address validation and getting better address details to them, and sort of helping them in the process of getting the parcel. Everybody wanted the same thing. We wanted to get the parcel to the buyer, and everybody came to the party and saw the benefit of technology in that. So I think there was huge leaps made towards that.
Okay, thanks, guys. Anita, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement came into operation at the beginning of this year. What impact do you think it will have on e-commerce in South Africa as well as the rest of Africa?
Yeah, Angie, I had to read up about that question a little bit, actually, to be honest, just to make sure that I give an answer that's worthwhile. It's very exciting. It shows intent. I think the aim is, or the intention is, that 90% of tariffs within those countries, I think it's 54 African countries, to be removed. But everything is kind of still in the future. So I think it really does show that as an African continent, if we can get that right, if you look at countries like America and obviously the European Union, there's a lot of potential. But I do think there's a lot of strides that still needs to be made. If we can get that right, 90% of tariffs to be removed, obviously massive saving from an e-commerce side, and it will entice, I would say, not your international, trade between these countries. So if that can happen, that will be amazing. There is still a lot of non-tariff barriers that needs to be addressed. That kind of is part of the typical African countries, corruptions, other type of barriers. That still makes it very difficult to trade between these countries. And I also think one thing is that also makes it expensive from an e-commerce side is the logistics, is being able to ship this one parcel from South Africa, let's say, to Botswana. When you have volume and you're trading in volume, I think there's still, it can be competitive, but shipping this one parcels or two parcels, it is still very expensive. So even if there is a saving from the tariff side, the logistics side also needs to be competitive, getting the parcel from one country to another country, and then getting it there safely. and getting it there within the time it needs to get there. And I think with Africa is quite, one of the characteristics is still timing is a bit of a problem, and flights are late, and the roads isn't great between the countries. So there's still a lot of infrastructure that I think also needs to happen for it to become the kind of environment that the EU is experiencing, and America is like a country on its own with all the, with a kind of level of e-commerce between their states. But at least it is a move in the right direction. Which is very exciting for e-commerce in South Africa, but I don't think people should bet on that just yet. So give it some more time.
Yeah, I'm hearing lots of opportunities. So, I mean, if we can get a few players to jump on board here, it could be, like you say, it could be amazing. Then, Jaco, from a technology perspective, what digital innovations do you think will power the next phase of e-commerce growth?
So we've seen a massive acceleration of local deliveries. I don't know if you've seen on the roads the number of scooters and bikes riding around doing local delivery. So
definitely,
everybody, it was always there, but it sort of accelerated through COVID, and that will continue to grow. I think more micro, small deliveries, getting the last mile right, because couriers struggle with the last mile because of addresses, and that's why I think the big will be addresses. We're one of the only countries in the world that have a combination of suburb and postal code, and everybody has their own idea of how that should work. And I think if we can get that standardized in our country, that will go leaps and bounds towards making e-commerce better, making deliveries for everybody better. So I'm really hoping that we can, we as uAfrica, trying to solve that problem as well, doing address validation and at least catching that as early as possible. So when a buyer places an order, to be able to tell them the address is not right, or even pinning it on a map. Google Maps have been coming a long way. And if we can solve that, I think e-commerce will be able to go from strength to strength. So I'm hoping.
I'm looking forward to seeing that coming up from you guys. And then finally, could you both please discuss what's needed to ensure sustainable development of e-commerce in South Africa, and how do we make sure it's accessible to the vast majority of South Africans?
I think from my side is that we really need the industry to work together. Even though a lot of trust was developed or built last year, there is still a lot of people that's too scared to buy online and that doesn't trust the industry. And there is sadly reasons for that sometimes, where people are misusing the industry and that which can result in consumers losing trust. So I think as the industry really need to work together, from payment gateways to logistic providers like us, the couriers, the online platforms. So there's still a lot of, I think, work to be done. And if we can work together to facilitate those trust, the growth can even be more than it is right now. And then I do think just from a customer side, is that we need to realize that in e-commerce, you need to put the customer first. So being able to offer, and I think that's where logistics plays a very, very big part, is being able to take that parcel safely from the online merchant to the customer, and it needs to be a good experience, because that's where a lot of the trust can get lost. So I think that is obviously the space that we're trying to add value to. It's every day changes. Every day we want to add something more. So I think it's just becoming better in what we do, and depending on whatever area that is. So I think that's from my side.
Yeah, I think I spoke to one of our customers yesterday, and they had mobile orders of 85% of all their orders were placed on mobile devices. So I think mobile penetration is definitely on an area where people are actually using mobile devices to order products. In the past, it is people viewed on mobile devices, but they went back to their computers to order. There's a big change in that. Our problem in our country is data is expensive. Mobile data is very expensive. And if we can get that cheaper, it will go a long way to do that. We've come a long way with 3D Secure. Our banking system is one of the best in the world. So fraud in that case has been curbed to a big extent, where the owners will fall back on the card holder because you've got 3D Secure, and that helps. But I think more payment options in a country is definitely needed as well. Debit cards needs to be better integrated into payment gateways. But I think that, I mean, the people, if you can get people online, people are starting to trust the system. They are not scared anymore of losing their money. They are seeing that returns are easier. Like Anita mentioned earlier, clothing has been booming this year, and everybody's buying shoes online and clothing. And I think that shows a big step towards trust of the system, which I quite like. So if we can get cheaper data, I think e-commerce will grow, but we still far off from total retail spend being e-commerce. We're still in single digits, and if we can get that to grow faster, it will help everybody. But I think it's the lines are very much blurred at the moment, or will be more blurred between online and offline. There's companies where you can place an order and it will send somebody physically into a store, pick up the product, and then ship it to you. So I think online and offline will be morphed together in the coming years, and we won't know the difference anymore. So you'll order online, or you'll order in a store, and you'll order where you want to, and you won't know the difference. So that's where I see it going.
I'm hearing a lot of opportunities, so I'm very excited to see what the future holds for this industry, as I'm sure both of you are as well.
Definitely.
That's all for today's show, and thank you again to my guests for joining me. And of course, a reminder to keep your eyes peeled for more e-commerce related news with the launch of eCommerce Day on 10 March 2021. This is Jaco. Take it where you like it, when you like it. Bye for now.